Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Candace Homolis, and I'm the Executive Communications Coordinator at EPA Region 7. I can't tell you how excited I am that you're here with us today. Our goal today is to share information with you regarding the exciting opportunities created by these grants to help break down barriers that might be standing in your way of accessing these unprecedented grant funds, and to provide you points of contact for help and additional information. Now, we know that you all are in the best position to know what resources your communities and states need, and we are here to support you in that effort. I will moderate the grant webinar this afternoon, and I want to give you some insight into how today's call is going to go. In just a few minutes, members from EPA's divisions are going to tell you about some exciting opportunities offered through their programs. We know that you will have questions, and we do ask that you submit all questions via the Q&A section of this webinar. While the presenter will try to respond to questions as they come in, there will not be enough time to get to all of them. But don't worry, all questions will be responded to. Questions that are not responded to verbally will be captured in the Q&A section, and participants will receive a follow-up call from our subject matter experts. Lastly, we are recording today's webinar, and we're going to be posting it on our website in the coming days so that those who are unable to attend today's offering may benefit from the information. Now I am going to send things over to Christopher Simmons to share information regarding opportunities in the EPA's Water Division. Chris?
Hey, thank you very much, Candace. Hello, everybody. My name is Christopher Simmons. I want to talk to you about the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. Let me share my screen. Let me know and hope everybody can see that. Can everybody see my screen presentation? Okay. All right, like I said before, my name is Christopher Simmons, and I am the State Revolving Fund Coordinator in the Water Division of EPA Region 7. I'm here to share exciting information regarding funding opportunities related to the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law investment, which was provided to the State Revolving Fund program in your community. This presentation may be different than any grant presentation you participated in before. I'll speak briefly on individual funding opportunities and programs, but my primary objective is to show how these funds can be used to improve your community. Some of you may not be familiar with the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law or the State Revolving Fund Program. This law provides additional funding to the traditional State Revolving Fund Program to address the nation's aging water and wastewater infrastructures. Funding is now available. These funds provided to the states for community water and wastewater infrastructure improvements. As you can see, we have quite a bit of money out there, $20 billion for safe drinking water, $15 billion in dedicated funding to replace lead pipes, $12 billion to ensure clean water for communities, and $1.8 billion to protect regional waters. And overall, $135 million for additional water improvements will also be available. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law investment provides billions of funding to states to loan to communities within those states for water and wastewater infrastructure facility improvement. The lead service line replacement, emerging contaminants, general supplemental, and base state revolving fund clean water and drinking water sources offer over $40 billion of funding each year to states focused on addressing a wide array of water and wastewater infrastructure issues. These sources of funding are designed to give communities greater access to funds to accomplish their objectives. Over $183 billion will be available through this loan program for the next 4 years. An opportunity that I'm really excited about is the lead service line funding source. This funding source, as you can see on the slide, offers $15 billion per year for 5 years to address the large number of failing lead service lines in the nation. 49% of the money loaned to communities will be forgiven. As I discussed, this funding source is available to state communities' water infrastructure system. Please contact your state revolving fund coordinator in your state to request information regarding the application process. Also on the slide here, activities such as identification of lead service lines, planning and design of projects, and removal and replacement of lead service lines are eligible. One other thing I wanted to point out here is the state match. A lot of these funds require a state match, but for this pot of money, the lead service line, the state match will be fully waived. Exposure to lead has been found to be extremely harmful. Removing and replacing lead service lines has been especially difficult for Americans in disadvantaged communities. The bipartisan infrastructure law prioritizes funding to disadvantaged communities and provides an alternative source of funding. I know many of you may have a lot of questions. Feel free to contact me. My contact information or email is on the screen in front of you. And I will pass it on to Jenny Kissel.
Thank you so much, Chris. Let me share my screen real quick.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jenny Kissel, and I work with the Inflation Reduction Act program in the Air Division here at EPA Region 7. Today, I'm going to give some quick highlights of the Inflation Reduction Act grants related to air programs. Then my coworker, Shelley, will give an overview of some upcoming grants related to school buses. Switching slides. There we go. Through the Inflation Reduction Act, EPA will improve the lives of millions of Americans by reducing pollution in neighborhoods where people live, work, play, and go to school, accelerating environmental justice efforts in communities overburdened by pollution for far too long, and tackling our biggest climate challenges while creating jobs and delivering energy security. So just to give a flyover view of a lot of the programs that we have coming out, here are some key areas of the Inflation Reduction Act funding. So there's funding to capitalize on new and existing green banks and fund state and local government investment in distributed energy and other clean technologies. There's funding for climate pollution reduction grants at the state, local, and tribal level to develop and implement plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and develop climate action plans. There's funding for environmental and climate justice block grants to fund community-based nonprofit organizations. There's funding to reduce air pollution at ports and to buy and install zero-emission technology. There's funding for methane emissions reductions and technical aid to accelerate emission reductions from petroleum and natural gas systems. And there's funding for clean heavy-duty vehicles to provide grants, rebates, and contract support to replace heavy-duty vehicles with zero-emission alternatives. You'll be hearing more about the clean heavy-duty vehicle grants soon because there are some upcoming funding announcements we wanted to share. So this is just a high-level overview of the Inflation Reduction Act programs. More details and information will be on the EPA website. One resource to keep track of is this webpage, which we'll make sure comes out after the webinar in an email. So this link will take you to a website that has funding announcements about the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. So we just wanted to make sure that you knew this was out there. This lists the opportunity, the funding and type, eligible applicants, and the opening and closing dates. So this will be updated over time. So this is a really good resource to keep track of. So thank you so much. And I'm going to turn this over to Shelley.
Hi, I'm Shelley Reimer, and I work with the Clean School Bus and Diesel Emission Reduction Act programs in the Air Division here at EPA Region 7. Please use my email address and contact me if you have any questions about school bus replacement projects. First, I want to start with an overview of the 2023 opportunities for school buses. EPA is planning to open both a Diesel Emission Reduction Act, or DERA, national grant program and a Clean School Bus Grant Program application period this spring in the coming weeks. In addition, we expect a Clean School Bus Rebate Program to open in the fall of 2023. You can sign up for email notifications at the links included on this slide, and we will make sure that attendees receive all of the links that we're providing. Okay, before we dive in, I want to quickly explain key differences between grants and rebates since we alternate between the two program types. Rebates are relatively easy for schools and smaller contractors to administer themselves for the purpose of replacing anywhere from 1 up to 25 school buses. It's a simple application because it is lottery. Basically, we need limited information to ensure that the applicant is eligible and that they have eligible buses for replacement. Grants are a little bit different ballgame, but still a practical method of replacing school buses. Grants target an entity that would apply for at least 50 buses, which must be spread across a minimum of 4 schools. You might want to find an organization that will administer the grant for multiple schools, such as a school transportation organization. Another option could be a large contractor that provides buses for multiple schools. These requirements will be clarified in the program guidance, which will be released when the application period opens. Okay, and then EPA's clean diesel programs. We have several listed here, all of which have a primary purpose of reducing harmful emissions by replacing older diesel vehicles with new, cleaner vehicles. You may have heard of DERA over the past 15 years. DERA programs provide funding for the replacement of school buses as well as other heavy-duty diesel vehicle replacements like trucks and even diesel-powered equipment with new gas, diesel, electric, propane, or natural gas fueled engines. The bulk of DERA funding typically goes to school bus replacement projects, which is important because children are particularly susceptible to the effects of nitrogen oxides and particulate pollution produced by heavy-duty diesel engines. There are a couple different DERA funding opportunities each year. EPA administers a national grant program, which provides grants for buses and other vehicle and equipment replacements. EPA provides states with DERA grants, and then the states administer the programs. And then EPA has also administered a national DERA rebate program strictly for school buses. Then the Inflation Reduction Act will provide funding for heavy-duty vehicle replacement programs, and then more funding under DERA. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law is funding the replacement of diesel school buses with new electric, propane, or natural gas-powered buses through direct funded rebates and then separate grant programs. Okay, and then back to DERA, the upcoming DERA National Grant Program. We are hoping to see the next DERA application period open in the coming 6 to 8 weeks, maybe sooner, but I can't say for sure right now. This one will be a competitive grant program that will last 2 years. The eligible applicants include school districts, regional planning organizations, municipalities, counties, and nonprofit organizations. Eligible projects can be class 5 through 8 heavy-duty highway vehicles, including school buses, trucks, and then various other equipment. These national DERA grants can range from more than $1 million to as little as $20,000. And we typically fund anywhere from 1 to 2 dozen grants per year in Region 7 states. That would be Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, and Nebraska. Okay, and then more about the Inflation Reduction Act. As Jenny said, we want to highlight the IRA. It will provide $1 billion for $1 billion for class 6 and 7 heavy-duty zero-emission vehicles, which could include electric school buses and maybe some trucks too. There will be an additional $60 million for DERA. This will likely be implemented through the National Grant Program. And then IRA also includes another $50 million to improve school air quality. EPA will provide grants and technical aid to schools serving low-income communities and the organizations that support them to address environmental issues, develop school environmental quality plans, mitigate ongoing air pollution hazards, and improve the health and safety of students and staff. All right, and in conclusion, as you are learning today, there are several new funding opportunities related to the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. As I mentioned, EPA is planning to open a Diesel Emission Reduction Act grant program and a Clean School Bus grant program pretty soon. Also, keep your eyes out for the possible Clean School Bus rebate program beginning in the fall of 2023. We are excited to share these opportunities with you. Thank you so much for your time, and you can scan this QR code to sign up for our newsletter. And now I will pass it over to the Environmental Justice team.
Thank you, Shelley. Okay, share my screen. Okay, I think I'm ready now. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm LaTanya Sanders, and I am the manager of the EPA Region 7 Community section. I'm here today to share with you some exciting information regarding funding opportunities related to environmental justice. I'll speak briefly on 4 main EJ funding opportunities and programs. Then I will share a few examples of EJ projects, as well as how these funds can be used. So what is environmental justice? Some of you may not be familiar with the term environmental justice. The term comes from a grassroots community-led movement that is linked to the civil rights movement. The EJ movement began in 1982 after many African-American residents in Warren County, North Carolina, protested for several days about the siting of a toxic waste landfill in their community that they were not notified about. EPA defines environmental justice as ensuring that all people, regardless of race, color, or national origin or income, regardless of where they live, are treated fairly and can participate meaningfully in issues that impact their health and their environment. Recent legislation has created exciting opportunities for communities to work together to address environmental concerns. So here's a quick snapshot of the EJ grants. Funding is now available for the following programs in numbers 2 through 4. These initiatives provide funds for community-based nonprofit organizations, and in some cases, universities or local, state, and tribal governments and their partners to identify environmental and public health concerns, and also for the first time to implement and take actions to address those concerns. So the EJ Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Centers, or for short, we call them TICTACs. These centers will be available to provide technical assistance, training, and related support to communities and their partners with environmental justice concerns. The technical assistance services provided will include training and assistance on writing grant proposals, navigating federal systems such as grants.gov and sam.gov, effectively managing grant funds, community engagement, meeting facilitation, and translation and interpretation services for limited English-speaking participants. We are excited that the TICTAC selections will be announced later this month. The EJ Collaborative Problem Solving Program, or EJ-CPS. This program is offering $30 million to recipients for projects that support community-based nonprofit organizations in collaboration with other stakeholders. And those stakeholders could be local businesses and industry, local government, medical service providers, academia, just to name a few, to develop solutions that significantly address environmental or public health issues in communities disproportionately burdened by environmental harms. Each cooperative agreement is eligible for up to $500,000. Special consideration will be given to proposals that focus on climate change, disaster resiliency, and/or emergency preparedness, projects that are in rural areas, and projects performing health impact assessments. The application for this grant closes on April 14, 2023. The EJ Government to Government Program, or GTG, as we like to call it, is offering $7 million to recipients developing projects that create or model activities that lead to measurable environmental or public health results. Each grant is eligible for up to $1 million in funding. Eligible entities are states, local governments, tribal governments, U.S. territories, and freely associated states. Special consideration will be given to proposals that focus on climate change, disaster resiliency, and/or emergency preparedness, projects that are in rural areas, and projects that perform health impact assessments. This application period for this grant also closes on April 14, 2023. The next slide lists examples of what can be accomplished with the EJCPS and the GTG funds, which will focus on implementation, not just education or demonstration projects. We are really excited about this change because in the past, we could only make people aware of the issues and perform demonstrations, but not remediate the pollution source. So this is a huge deal. For both of these EJ grant programs, examples of project activities must relate to the 5 following areas: community-led air and other pollution monitoring, prevention, remediation, and investments, mitigating climate and health risk, climate resiliency and adaptation, reducing indoor toxics and indoor air pollution, or facilitating engagement of marginalized communities. Specific examples could be energy recovery projects, training and mitigation of pollution, or remediation of lead or asbestos. The new Environmental Justice Thriving Communities grant-making program is a competition to select multiple grant makers around the nation to reduce barriers to the federal grant application process that communities face and increase the efficiency of the awards process for environmental justice grants. The grant makers will then design a competitive application and submission process, award EJ subgrants, implement a tracking and reporting system, and provide resources and support to communities, all in collaboration with EPA. EJ subgrants will be available for 3 distinct phases: the assessment phase, planning, and project development. It provides a total of about $550 million for approximately 11 pass-through funders, or about $50 million per award. Eligible groups are colleges, universities, nonprofits, and intertribal consortia. Types of projects may include air quality and asthma, small cleanup projects, improving food access to reduce vehicle miles traveled, stormwater issues in green infrastructure, lead and asbestos contamination, environmental job training for occupations that reduce greenhouse gases and other air pollutants, and environmental justice for youth, just to name a few. The application period for this grant closes on May 31st, 2023. Next, I want to share a few examples of Region 7 EJ grant activities. The past 25 years, we have funded EJCPS and small grant awards that went to organizations in our 4 states of Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, and Nebraska to address various air, water, and waste issues. Recent grants have focused on education, outreach, and/or demonstration projects. Some of the topics included tree canopies, community gardening, reducing heat impacts, and improving energy efficiency in urban cities such as Omaha, Springfield, St. Louis, and Kansas City. We've also had grants in rural communities as well on topics like radon and lead education and testing in Postville, Iowa. Well water and soil testing in Latino farming communities in Nebraska, and reducing medical waste and contaminants in the water system in Clinton County, Iowa. More examples can be found at the link on the screen where you can look up EJ grants examples in every state. We encourage you to sign up for the National EJ Listserv for updates and information related to EJ's resources, webinars, events, and news at EPA and other federal partners, as well as our Region 7 EJ mailing list. We also have a Region 7 community information guide as well. Thank you for your time, and we appreciate the opportunity to share these landmark funding opportunities with you. I will now turn it over to Alma Marino-Lam with the Brownfields program.
Thank you, Latanya. And hi, everyone. Are you seeing my slides? Let's see.
No, we're just seeing your
There
video.
we go. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry. I had to hit another button. Can you see it now? Well, I got to hit share. Now are you seeing it? Yes? Thank you. So thank you, Latanya, and welcome everyone. I'm Alma Moreno-Lam, a longtime member of the EPA Region 7 Brownfields and Land Revitalization team. And I'm very happy for this opportunity to share some information with you about all of the funding that we have available for communities through the EPA Brownfields and Land Revitalization Program, and to also provide you a few snapshots from different communities so that you can get a sense of how you can transform these neglected and abandoned properties in your neighborhoods into something that's healthy and sustainable and reflective of the people and the needs in your community. Are you actually just seeing my slides or also my talking points?
Your talking points too.
Okay, I just realized that. Okay, I'm trying to get to it. For some reason, I'm not able to.
You click share, and then you should be able to select, if you're using 2 screens, you should be able to select which screen you want to share.
Yeah, that's the one. Start from beginning. There we go. But now I can't get to my talking points behind, but that's okay. Here we go. Can you guys see it now?
You're gonna need to reshare. You'd stop sharing.
Okay. Sorry. There we go. And I will try this again. No, it's still showing the one with talking points. Okay, I'll share screen 2, I guess, because that seems to be. No, it's not. I'm going to share and I will try screen 2 because it seems to go to that, and hopefully I can figure this out. I think that's also the talking points, but that's not what I want. I have it queued up over here. This worked yesterday. How's that? Is that better?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome.
You're good to go.
Sorry, audience. So let me get to the correct slide. Now I need to advance to the next slide, and I can't seem to do that. Let's see, there we go. Okay. So with that, let's see. So the bipartisan the bipartisan infrastructure law more than doubled the resources available through EPA's Brownfields and Land Revitalization Program. And it represents the nation's largest single investment in this program and provides up to $1.2 billion for additional grants and increased technical assistance that is going to be spread over 5 years. And this is a threefold increase in grant and project funding. So that means that EPA will award more competitive grants for more money, as well as increase the availability of non-competitive brownfield assessments, which is the activities that we do with our contractors to find out if you indeed have a brownfield, and if you do, what needs to be cleaned up. And we help you develop a plan for cleaning it up and figuring out how much it might cost so that you can apply for the funding to get it cleaned up. And also increase the technical assistance for things like site design. What do you want this place to look like in the future for your community? And financial planning so that we can help you find the resources to pay for that. So all of this $1.2 billion, all of these staff resources will help you transform the lives and spur life-changing health and sustainable revitalization in your communities, both for large, small, and urban and rural, which we're putting extra emphasis on disadvantaged communities and underserved populations. So please reach out to us. We're trying to connect not just to increase economic activity in your area, but connect the people to the jobs that are created so that someone from outside your community doesn't just get those great paying jobs. The people in your community can get those environmental jobs, let's say assessing and cleaning up the sites, and then working, you know, the jobs that are developed in the new redeveloped product that results from all that. So with that, I will now explain to you, I'm sorry, I got to go back. Somehow my talking points, let's see. Are you seeing the slide with the 3 pictures, a building on the top? Yeah, I see it over here. This is slide number 3. So before we talk about this slide, let me explain or answer a few questions that you might have that are developing in your brain right now. What is a brownfield? So brownfields is real property, the expansion, redevelopment, or reuse of which may be complicated by the presence or potential presence of hazardous substances, pollutants, contaminants, controlled substances, petroleum or petroleum products, or it is a mine-scarred land area. If you have questions about what that is, there'll be context at the end. Mold, for example. You may not think of that, but that is one of them that we can pay for cleanups on. That's a mouthful, but simply it's brownfields that are properties that have or maybe thought to have been affected by these hazardous substances, which make reuse of the property difficult or dangerous, or just people are like hands off from it and it's just sitting there mothballed. So who decides which properties are brownfields? You do. We don't designate them. You get to decide that. Brownfields are defined by your local community, grant recipients, property owners, or other stakeholders. We won't tell you, we won't say this is a brownfields for you. This slide outlines the steps that brownfields projects from the beginning to the end the process they'll go to figure things out and to get action on them. Consider where your project is on the spectrum to help us identify the resources that might be right for your project. Make note that the best and most successful projects Make note that the best and most successful projects conduct activities related to community engagement and planning activities continually throughout the project and adjust plans as needed depending on what you're finding. I promised some snapshots, and to illustrate the possibility for your community, here's a few pictures. This is a project in the city of Council Bluffs, Iowa. The city used EPA cleanup grant funds to remove asbestos and other contaminants at the McCormick Harvest #2 warehouse. That's the picture on the right. And then the cleanup cleared the way for the nonprofit Potawatomi Arts, Culture, and Entertainment investments of over $24 million to redevelop the site into a metro-wide asset, the Hoff Family Arts and Culture Center, which is now the home of the American Midwest Ballet, the Chanticleer Theater, the Kitchen Council, and the Canesville Symphony Orchestra. Slide 4. Now that you know what brownfields are, who decides that they are brownfields and the steps necessary to revitalize and reuse them, you may be wondering what assistance EPA can provide to assist such a project. So the answer is all the stuff that's on this slide. And I know it's a lot, so don't get overwhelmed. You will have access to a PDF file of all these slides. So I'd like to ask you to just focus on listening and make yourself some notes on some things that you might want to check on or that you have questions on. The point I want to make is that we have both direct assistance funds from EPA, where we provide services, where we provide the contractors that are helping you, and indirect assistance available for brownfields and revitalization projects. The non-competitive technical assistance, it's on a first come, first serve basis. We have unprecedented amounts of funding for that. Please call. And indirect resources are free to you because EPA has invested with its partners to make that help available to you. It just takes some effort and a little bit of asking questions to understand. The highlighted boxes and information are the resources that I will introduce to you today. Slide 5. This is another busy slide with information for your future reference. The takeaway here is that EPA has 5 national grant competitions. The first 4, assessment, cleanup, and multipurpose. That multipurpose includes both assessment and cleanup in one grant. And the Brownfields Cleanup Revolving Loan Fund program grants, those are $1 million or greater funds for cleaning up properties and doing loans and subgrants to eligible applicants. All of those grants are for local governments and quasi-governmental entities, regional councils of governments, which I'm hoping you'll reach out to us, states, tribes, and nonprofits to determine the extent of contamination at brownfields, plan the revitalization of those sites, and then conduct the cleanup if it's needed. While each grant type is not necessarily available each year, you may expect that competition will begin mid to late August through mid-October annually, with the applications due about 60 days after the release of what we call request for applications, and then typically an announcement in the spring of who it was that was successful. The same entities, along with job training organizations. So the next one, the 5th competition, is the job training grants. And it's the same organizations that can apply for the previous 4, plus job training organizations, community colleges, and universities that are able to apply for that. These grants provide funds to provide environmentally related job training to the unemployed and underemployed who are most impacted by brownfields. And I'll talk about that on the next slide. What I wanted to tell you on that is it tends to be paired with Department of Labor funding, which is in even billions, much bigger than ours. So it can combine to do like just basic remedial training like math, science, whatever it is, some basic stuff, providing tool belts and things like that, while we provide the technical training for environmental things, including things like CDL for hauling off waste from a site. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that not only did the bipartisan infrastructure law allow EPA to increase both the frequency of its grant competition and the amount of funds available for each type of grant, like from 200,000 now 500,000, it also removes some of the challenges for grant applicants, including eliminating that required match, which can be a challenge, especially for small and rural communities. It's typically 20%. You don't have that under this funding for both for the cleanup and for the revolving loan funds. Let me repeat that. Currently, no cost share requirements for these new competitive brownfields grants. Let's squeeze another example in here. The pictures on this slide demonstrate the assessment, cleanup, and transformation of an abandoned gas station, lots of them around in our communities. St. Louis, Missouri, up on the right, into the vibrant station number 3 neighborhood cafe. Gas stations such as these are everywhere, and it takes creativity and perseverance to turn them into local assets, whatever the asset is that your community needs. That's all part of the brownfields redevelopment process. Slide 6. Earlier I mentioned brownfields job training grants providing funds to a variety of organizations to support the environmentally related job training for the unemployed and underemployed who are most impacted by the brownfields. EPA is gearing up to start the FY24 brownfields job training competition late spring or early summer. Actually, early June is when you'll probably see the request for applications come out. The job training grants are one area of our program where we know the resources are directly benefiting individuals in your community. The City of Springfield's Green for Green Brownfields Job Training Program gives residents who are unemployed and underemployed, minorities, veterans, and individuals with justice involvement, particularly underserved populations, an opportunity to transform their lives through livable wage jobs. We recently had a graduation, and it would make you cry just to hear them say this program has given them hope and a job. Before they get released, all of them have been offered jobs, multiple jobs in some cases. Graduating program participants leave with 9 federal and 3 state certifications in topics related to environmental green jobs, and then participate in a local job fair. This gives them access to in-demand jobs with local employers making livable wages that are currently averaging $18.57 and as high as $24 per hour for 2023. And actually, we have had some people that are getting as much as $50 an hour. One gentleman got $130,000 salary and a transfer to Europe. So there you go. Let me share with you a little bit of one job training recipient's experience. Misty Harden's life, that's her picture there in the middle, has changed considerably since participating in the City of Springfield Summer 2020 Green for Green program. Misty was laid off from her job during COVID-19. She got her first job from the training program, and then she got laid off. Due to past mistakes, which led to her becoming a justice-involved individual, she found it difficult to find employment that would provide the income needed to support herself and her family. Shortly after completing Green for Green, however, Misty was offered employment, and then within a few months of starting the job was promoted to a position making $26.05 an hour, almost double what she made in her pre-COVID job. As Misty puts it, that is life-changing. And I believe she came back yet another time and got an additional training and got even a second promotion. Slide number 7. A great way for communities just getting started in the brownfields areas to start with direct technical assistance from EPA in the form of environmental site assessments, also known as targeted brownfields assessments, or TBAs, when we do those with our contractors. TBAs are conducted by EPA contractors on behalf of the applicant, so it's less of a lift for you in your community. If you're interested in these free services, there is a simple online application on our website. The application provides information we need to start evaluating whether you are eligible for a TBA. The applicant must be a public entity or nonprofit, but you guys can do that on behalf of a public party in some property that you're interested in your community and having that property transformed, and you're working with the private party. But you would have to be the ones asking for this. And whether the proposed site is also an eligible brownfields. Once we receive the application, we contact you to discuss the scope of your request so we can determine if we have the needed amount of funding available. And right now we're flush with funding. So please request these. Fortunately, the infrastructure law also has provided a significant amount of funding for TBAs as well. We accept TBA applications on a revolving basis, and our TBA resources are mostly used on a first come, first served basis. This type of service may also be available from your state or tribal brownfields program, but more on that later. And I will say that's a good way to get your feet wet and start to learn. And then you can decide if you want to assess more properties and want to come in for an assessment grant. Slide 8, the bipartisan infrastructure law also resulted in significant increased funding for land revitalization technical assistance, which is provided free by EPA and its contractors. Technical assistance can be provided for a variety of aspects of community engagement and visioning, site planning, market studies, project financial planning, climate resiliency, and renewable energy. I'm working on one right now where we're dealing with providing different housing options that are affordable and things that are not already existing in the community to draw people into the community. You may recall in 2014 that Delwood, Missouri made the national news after Michael Brown was killed by a Ferguson, Missouri police officer. 3 properties were destroyed or damaged along West Florissant Avenue in Delwood during the resulting civil disturbance. One of the properties, the former AutoZone, was destroyed by arsonists. Subsequently, redevelopment planning technical assistance was provided by the EPA Region 7's land revitalization team at the request of City of Delwood and St. Louis Economic Development Partnership. EPA's and its consultants used technical assistant resources to lead a community's visioning session and develop redevelopment plans for properties along West Florissant Avenue, including the former AutoZone site. Additional revitalization technical assistance resources were also used to develop a market analysis and financial plan specific to the former AutoZone property with focus on constructing senior housing on property. This led to a request that EPA conduct a TBA to facilitate the St. Louis Urban League's purchase of the property in 2021. This allowed the Urban League and its partner to break ground on a $10 million senior living development, and work is ongoing in the construction of 44 senior apartments. I've been a part of that project, and I can tell you all those 3 properties have gone, they're all in the process of being redeveloped, and it has taken a team of people, not just the TBA, but the land revitalization team. And then I have an assessment grant and a revolving loan fund grant there, and all of these resources, TAB, which I will talk about later, job training, all of these are factoring in. It takes, you know, when they say it takes a village, it truly does. Am I on slide 10 or not? Yes, okay. Another form of indirect technical assistance is assistance from the Technical Assistance to Brownfields Community at Kansas State University. That TAB, not to be confused with TBA, TAB program is free to you, and the staff serves as independent advisors to communities. There's numerous services that the TAB program can provide. So I'm recommending that you contact the Region 7 contact, Jennifer Clancy. She will become your friend to ask questions and discuss your needs. And Jennifer's contact will be on the list at the end of the presentation. They can even share some competitive, successful proposals from the past. They can help you with the writing. There is so much that they can do for you. You just got to contact them and ask. Slide 11. I have run out of time, but hope that at least one of the examples I shared looked familiar to you, and that you have a better understanding of the increased opportunities that are a bipartisan infrastructure law. Brownfields are present in all of our communities, and I encourage you to begin your brownfields journey, if you have not already, for taking a first step towards revitalizing brownfields in your community. I particularly encourage you to contact Jen Clancy with the KSU TAB program for your state brownfields coordinator to learn more about the program. Of course, you may also contact a member of our team to further explore whether your project is a match for our resources. Contact information at the end. I also recommend visiting EPA's Brownfields and Land Revitalization website. You'll see the links there as well for more information, examples of successes across the country, which might trigger your ideas for your community, and find tools suited to your community. While you are visiting EPA Brownfields website, I suggest signing up for the Brownfields listserv. That will keep you informed regarding the current and upcoming resources and competitions, because it will send you an email alerting you of that. And in this day of technology with information overload, just getting that quick alert can prompt action. I think I've been off on my slides, haven't I? Sorry. This is slide 12. And these next couple of slides will provide you the contact information about the State Brownfields Program and that KSU tab and all the other resources. So right now, I'd like to invite you to the 2023 National Brownfields Training Conference, which is August 8th through 11th in Detroit, Michigan. If you have not attended a conference before, this is a great opportunity to make connections with communities with similar challenges, meet potential developers and environmental professionals, and find out about innovative ways that communities have worked at the local level to revitalize their brownfields. If you're interested, a limited number of scholarships are usually offered for participants. You just need to watch for the brownfields2023.org website for that information on scholarships that are available nationwide, and your state and tribal brownfields programs may also have travel assistance available to you. Again, start reaching out to folks now so that you'll have something going, and then maybe you will be one of those selected if you're interested. If you do attend, consider arriving early enough to join us at the open house on August 7th. If you're new to the conference, attending the open house will help you to kind of network, meet people and network with other brownfield stakeholders from Region 7. If nothing else, you'll identify a friendly face to sit next to at the conference. And with that, I will share the various contacts. You can see the website here and contact names and numbers for the different areas. And last but not least, these people can be your friends. Each of these state contacts are so critical, and Kansas State TABS program is an amazing resource. There is also a job training resource, and if you reach out to me, I can share that with you. My challenge to you is a 24 to 48 hour action challenge, because I'd like you to act on what you're receiving today. If you would like livable wage environmental jobs for the people in your community, I'm going to say $25 to $50 an hour, okay? Please contact me about job training. I commit to you to helping you directly or indirectly through others that I'm recruiting and training now to help you learn how to help yourself and access these funds. Request for application, again, is probably coming out early June 2023, if not slightly sooner. That's why it's a 24 to 48 hour challenge. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to David Cheek. He is a very kind and experienced presenter who won't trip up like me. Enjoy. Let me stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Alma. Let me get going here. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much. My name is David Cheek. I'm a community program specialist here in the USDA Rural Development Missouri State Office. And this afternoon, I'd like to speak to you about a couple of opportunities that are probably most applicable, hopefully, to those of you on the phone or on the call. Here at USDA Rural Development, we have over 40 programs that are available to help support rural America: loans, grants, loan guarantees. Rural Development is the lead federal agency here in helping rural communities improve the economy and quality of life. Those 40 programs are kind of spread out over the 4 service areas you see below: business programs, community programs, housing programs, and utility programs. Today, like I said, I'm going to focus on our community facilities program and our water and environmental services program. Both of those are housed kind of underneath community programs. We'll begin by talking about community facilities. This program, the main purpose is to provide affordable funding to develop essential community services in those rural areas. We do not, in this program, we do not include any private or commercial type projects. Like we do have a business program for your for-profit businesses to take advantage of some of those. Funds under this community facilities program can be utilized to purchase, construct, or improve essential community facilities, purchase equipment, and pay for other related expenses. We do like to say that we can help build a community from the ground up. Here are a few examples of some project examples in our community facilities program. You can see there it kind of runs the gamut from healthcare to public safety, any type of lots of equipment funding available there, libraries, storm shelters, kind of you name it. So there's it's a very wide open program and can be used to help to do many types of projects. So who is eligible? Primarily, we're going to be talking about public bodies and community-based not-for-profits. And so our program, I guess I would like to say this is not necessarily special funding that came down through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law or the Inflation Reduction Act. Rather, these are 2 programs here I'm going to talk about that are available all year round. These are available, through an annual appropriation we get from Congress. And so primarily we're talking about loan programs. We do have some grant funds available. They are limited, but there are loans and grants available here. So to be a public body in Missouri, we can't make a loan directly to you without, unless the security would be a general obligation bond or a revenue bond. Now, some of the ways that we're able to continue to interact with those public bodies are through some community-based not-for-profits. And so not every not-for-profit will maybe qualify, but our staff can certainly walk you through that. We would take a detailed look at the organizational documents, and we could offer some helpful hints to kind of keep things moving. Eligibility for our community facilities program is we're talking about cities, villages, townships, towns, counties, kind of your public bodies, essentially, school districts, fire protection districts, library districts, ambulance districts. And again, certainly they have to be in a rural area, no more than 20,000 residents at the facility location. It must primarily serve rural residents. It must have community support, and the applicant must have the authority to legally own, operate, and maintain that facility. We do have what we call a test for credit. You have to be able to not get commercial credit, and we will. Again, we have staff all over the state that helps walk folks through this, and so we certainly can help you walk through that test for credit as well. What kind of funding do we have under our community facilities program? Again, like I mentioned, primarily a loan program. We have low interest loans. We do have some grants. We can do a combination loan and grant. We also have loan guarantees that are available. And so those aren't particularly utilized very often in Missouri. We do like to offer our low interest direct loans when possible. So no, not necessarily any maximum dollar amount. The amount of the loan will be determined by the amount needed, the repayment ability, and then of course funds available. We do have a pretty substantial amount of funding at our national office level. Loan term, the maximum life would be a 40-year loan term, or the maximum life of the security. Okay, whichever is less. I will put a little caveat with that. We don't typically finance much of anything for 40 years. Okay, here in Missouri, most of the time the life of the security is less than 40 years. So we try to keep it to 30 years or 35 whenever we can. Security that we can take land, improvements on that land, such as the buildings, equipment, revenue, taxes, bonds. Our loans don't have any prepayment penalty, okay? And we have a fixed interest rate for the life of the loan. And currently our rate is at 3.75%. Those rates do change quarterly. So you can just check in with any of our local offices, or you can contact us at the state office here to check on those interest rates. CF grants, community facilities grants. As I mentioned, our grant assistance is limited, but it is still available. Okay, and we do actually provide some funding for grant-only projects. I will say that the typical kind of in a normal year. The typical size of the grant, probably, just to kind of keep everybody's expectations aligned, we're talking between $20,000 and $50,000 per project. So just to kind of let everybody know there, if you're looking for a grant only and it's going to be a gigantic amount of money, we may not be the only funding partner. You may have to get involved there. So the grant eligibility is based on the median household income of the service area, as well as the population of where the facility is located, okay? I guess I kind of said that already. Grant funding may be used to supplement a loan or other funding sources. Of course, applicant contribution is always appreciated, always able to be utilized. We do take that applicant contribution in the form of cash only, okay? No in kind. The grants are provided on financial need. Okay, we will be looking at your entity's financials, whether that's audits or just unaudited end of year financials. And you must be unable to finance the project without grant assistance. And again, we will take a close look at all the financials and work with you to kind of determine that. Here are our grant percentages. We do not go over 75% of the project cost on a grant, okay? The higher the grant eligibility, the lower the median household income of the service area. So you can kind of see we range from 15, 35, 55, or 75% grant eligibility. One thing to remember, just because you qualify for 55 or 75% grant may not necessarily mean that you would get that maximum amount, but certainly our staff, again, would work with you and walk you through that process. Now we're going to get into our water and environmental programs. This was the other side, the other piece of our community programs. Our water and waste disposal loans and grants can be used to improve infrastructure, support health and public safety, and promote economic development. The main purpose of this program is to provide financing for water, sewer, and solid waste disposal and storm water facilities for rural residents. Primarily here in Missouri, what we see the most of is water and sewer projects by far. So that's kind of where we're going to take this presentation today. Eligibility here. We are, again, we're talking about public bodies, whether that's cities, towns, villages, counties, Special purpose districts, we do a lot of work with local water districts and sewer districts. Not-for-profit corporations are eligible. However, there's not many of those that I've seen in my time here. Again, primarily we're talking about your cities, your water districts, and your sewer districts. Population limit on our WEP program, on our water and wastewater program, a community, a city that their population has to be 10,000 or less. And so priorities given to those smaller communities, 5,500 or less. So what can we do with the funding, the water and wastewater funding? It can be used to construct, enlarge, or otherwise extend and improve water and waste disposal facilities, pay for any necessary fees, such as kind of your soft costs, so we like to refer to them as, your legal, engineering, land acquisition, right-of-way, permitting, those types of things. It can be used to purchase necessary equipment. I will say necessary equipment may not be all equipment. So we will take a look at any equipment that is needed pretty carefully to make sure that financing it with a revenue bond for 35 years is maybe the best way to finance that. It can also be used to pay for the associated environmental reports. Loan terms, again, this is primarily a loan program. We do not do any grant-only projects with our water and wastewater funding here in Missouri. So Missouri statutes limit the term of public body revenue bonds to 35 years, and not-for-profit corporations may potentially be able to borrow up to 40 years. Again, we do look at the life of the security and make a best determination on that. We try to stay away from 40 years. That's a long time to be financing something, but it's certainly a possibility that we could look at. We have a 3-level interest rate structure when we move down here to talk about interest rates: poverty rate of interest, intermediate rate of interest, and market rate. Those rates are typically determined by the median household income of the service area. If you're going to get poverty rate of interest, which currently sit right here, okay, if you're going to get poverty rate of interest, you do have to have an extremely low MHI for the service area, and we have to have some sort of violation that we're fixing, or just a health and sanitary standard that the project, once complete, would be addressing. So currently our poverty rate of interest is 2.25, and then range all the way up to 3.75. Most of our applicants fit in here between the either 2.25 for poverty or 3% for intermediate rate of interest. So anyway, that's kind of where everybody sits. They are fixed rate for 35 years, no fees, just a solid fixed rate, straight amortization. The security that we take on these types of water and sewer loans, normally secured by revenue bonds. We can take a GO bond or general obligation bond if the test for credit can be met. In the realm of municipal finance, GO bonds, general obligation bonds, are thought to be kind of Cadillac security, and so we really have to make sure that test for credit can be met. Rural development, we cannot be out there openly competing with commercial lenders, and so that's why I keep referring to the test for credit. So typically, probably 99% of the time, our security that we're working with is revenue bonds. So, and then if the project is for a not-for-profit, the security we're taking is a note and deed of trust. Will I get a grant? Everybody likes to hear about grant funding. Again, relatively limited compared to the amount of loan funds that we have, and so grants are considered only after the determination is made on the maximum amount of loan that you can afford, okay, and still have reasonable user rates. What is a reasonable user rate? Right now, what we're looking at here in Missouri, in order to be eligible for grant funds, we're looking at for at least a 2% 2% of the median household income for the service area of the project, okay? And so that's a relatively easy calculation to do once you do have the median household income. And so that's kind of where we have rates need to be in order to utilize those grant funds. Again, that just helps spread the funding out to as many communities as we can help. Grant funding is considered gap financing, okay? And so all of your other funding sources must be considered first. First and foremost, we're talking about applicant contribution. How much money can you bring to the table? Can you put into the project? Again, the amount of RD loan that you can afford, and perhaps any other partners, such as Community Development Block Grant, or even Missouri Department of Natural Resources. Where do we start? First place to start, good place would be to go out with an RFP or an RFQ and get you a project engineer on board. We do have to have an engineering report to review for a potential project and take a look at the scope. Have them come to the community, have them meet the staff, meet the folks that run the water plant, the sewer plant, put together a plan, and not just something for the immediate issue, but something that looks a little further out. What are the needs of the community going to be in, say, 5 years or 10 years? Take steps to get to know your system, okay? If you are a board member, if you're a council person, if you are advising any of these people, if you're a regional planning commission, I know that the RPCs out there have very close relationships with their member entities. So help them to take those steps to get to know the system and know if it works. Learn if it's making you money or costing you money. We look at these systems have to be run like a business, okay? You can't have a water rate, you can't have a sewer rate that is lower than the amount of revenue needed to pay your bills. And so you've got to make sure that your rates are adjusted to a certain level that's required. Make sure that you involve the board of directors or the city council or the alderpersons. They own the system. It's not just the job of the operator to make sure it works. And again, I've already talked about this, kind of raise rates to keep things in line so you don't pass the burden on to someone else. This is a little bit of a kind of get up on a platform for me a little bit here, I guess. I've seen this happen so many times that, especially some of the most rural and some of the most, distressed communities out there, they like to keep rates excessively low, and, they feel like they're doing folks a favor by keeping rates low. And they may be for the short term, but ultimately that kind of can come back and bite them a little bit. And so I would highly suggest really looking at those rates every year, maybe do an incremental increase. We're talking about a certain percentage every year, a certain, number of cents or a certain number of dollars per year. If you keep the water sewer rates in line, that's just going to keep generating revenue so that you can maintain the system you've got and possibly help put some money towards a new system or a project in the future. I'm not going to take any questions right now. Those are supposed to be put into the Q&A section. We'll be around to answer questions for the remainder of the presentation. Rural development here in Missouri, we're split into 4 areas, as you can see. The star indicates the city of Columbia, and that's where our state offices are here in Columbia. And so all of these dots indicate offices where we have a rural development presence all around the state, okay? Here's some contact information. I believe the EPA, the preparers of the webinar here, are going to have contact information, so you can certainly reach out to me with any questions. I'd be happy to answer them or get you to the appropriate person. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Kim Davids. She is a senior public health advisor with HHS.
Thanks, David. Good afternoon, and thank you so much to EPA for the opportunity to be a part of this conversation with my federal colleagues. My name is Kimberly Davids, and I work for the Department of Health and Human Services, the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Health here in Region 7. And HHS doesn't have any grants to offer, but we do have resources that I wanted to share. You've heard in the other presentations, there is a lot of opportunity within IRA funding to improve health. Many of these investments have the potential to improve care, deepen resilience, and reduce cost. For example, investments in renewable energy allow facilities to save money that would have previously gone to their local utility, which opens the possibility for increased investments in patient-centered activities. If that renewable energy is stored on site in a microgrid, it can also help the provider stay open in emergencies when the grid loses power. I do want to note that HHS will be launching reference materials aimed at helping the health sector understand the key opportunities to address climate change presented by the IRA. In the meantime, we will continue to share major announcements on the website, and also we have an upcoming webinar series titled Accelerating Healthcare Sector Action on Climate Change and Health Equity. So at the end, I will put the resources and the links in the chat. So under Executive Order 14008, Tackling the Climate Crisis, HHS did receive some mandates which established the Office of Climate Change and Health Equity. We call this office OCHE. It does sit underneath the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Health in DC. So HHS really is taking a more active role to address the challenges climate poses to health. And our regional office works very closely with the staff in DC with OCHE, and I'm happy to connect anyone on this call if you have any questions about any of the resources. On Earth Day 2022, the White House and HHS launched the Health Sector Climate Pledge, which is a voluntary commitment to climate resilience and emissions reduction that includes cutting greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030 and achieve net zero emissions by 2050. We did have 102 organizations that represent 837 hospitals who signed the pledge before it closed in October of 2022. In addition to hospitals, we also had stakeholders such as health centers, suppliers, insurance companies, group purchasing organizations, pharmaceutical companies, and more who signed the pledge. I do want to note that the federal systems like the Indian Health Service, the Veterans Health Administration, and military health systems are also working to meet goals similar to the private sector. So combined, this means that we've had over 1,080 federal and private sector hospitals made such commitments, which represents over 15% of US hospitals. So we did close the climate pledge back in October, but by popular demand, HHS just announced earlier in March that they're reopening it. It will be accepting new signatories on an ongoing basis. The healthcare sector contributes 8.5% of total US emissions. So there's a lot of opportunity for improvement in this space. And the pledge really is just the starting point in the sector's efforts to address the harmful impacts of climate change, especially in high-risk communities across the country. And OCHE is committed to working with organizations who have signed the pledge and anyone really who's interested on climate resilience and emissions reduction. And I want to share a couple of resources because in some of the earlier presentations, they've talked about emissions reduction and resilience and incorporating the impacts of health. So 3 resources here. The first one on the left is the Enhancing Healthcare Resilience for a Climate or Changing Climate Best Practices Guide, which this is really focused on healthcare infrastructure resilience to climate change impacts as manifested primarily by extreme weather events. OCHE is working on an update to this guide, so stay tuned for that. The one in the middle is the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality's primer on reducing healthcare carbon emissions. The primer identifies core and elective measures to track progress in and critical strategies to reduce greenhouse gases in key domains. And the other really cool thing about the primer is that it gives examples of what health systems have done to reduce greenhouse gases. And then last but not least, the ASPER-Tracy Climate Change Resilience and Healthcare System Considerations. This provides an overview of climate trends in the U.S. and outlines impacts of climate-related illness and injury on health system operations, care delivery, and patient surge. The intended audience for this document is listed as healthcare executives and emergency planners, but it also can be really beneficial for, various healthcare, public health and emergency management organizations, as well as mental health professionals and school-based professionals. So as I mentioned before, the Office of Climate Change and Health Equity is going to be launching some materials later this month aimed at helping the health sector kind of understand these opportunities and different ways that they can apply this funding toward improving health. So I'm going to put the link in the chat that you can share with any of your health partners. If you have any questions after this presentation, you can reach out directly to me. Thank you all for your time, and I will now turn it over to my colleague at HUD, Fred Briscoe.
All right, thank you, Kimberly. Let me share my screen here. Right, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Fred Briscoe. I'm a program analyst here in the HUD Kansas City Regional Office. I want to thank you for allowing me to present to you today. If you have any questions during this presentation, feel free to post into the chat and I'll connect you with the appropriate program office that may better assist you. Also, my slides will be provided at the conclusion of the presentation. So today I'll touch on a few programmatic efforts and funding opportunities that directly align with the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act. We will discuss briefly a number of opportunities such as the Technical Assistance Fund, the Weatherization Assistance Program, Tribal Communities Investments, Affordable Connectivity Programs, Lead Hazard Mitigation, our multifamily housing investment, and finally, leveraging community planning and development home funding. So first we have the Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Fund, which is a $5 million investment that allows state, local governments, and tribes to invest in a range of infrastructure projects, including transportation, water systems, high-speed internet accessibility, environmental remediation, and electric grids. These investments will reach every community across the country, including those that have been under-resourced or are experiencing economic distress. This technical assistance guidance is part of the Thriving Community Network, which is an interagency initiative among the Departments of Transportation, HUD, Energy, Commerce, and Agriculture, as well as the General Services Administration and the EPA that will provide recipients specific skills or knowledge to successfully meet the needs of their community. Funding will be provided on a rolling basis until depleted. Additional information and application submissions can be found at the link below. The Weatherization Assistance Program in fiscal year 2002, HUD's Office of Lead Hazard Control and Healthy Homes, in collaboration with the Department of Energy's Weatherization Assistance Program, through a $5 million grant opportunity, coordinated delivery of the services that achieve cost effectiveness and better outcomes in improving the safety and quality of homes, including health and energy efficiency. The coordinated assessments and interventions provided additional benefits to households through the combined mitigation of health and safety hazards and improvements in energy efficiency. Our tribal communities investments. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law appropriated $3.5 billion to the Indian Health Service to build the infrastructure necessary to ensure a safe supply of drinking water, reliable sewage systems, and solid waste disposal facilities. The funding will promote high-quality healthcare and disease prevention in tribal communities. To help coordinate these and other water and wastewater infrastructure funds, EPA has revitalized the Tribal Infrastructure Task Force through a memorandum of understanding between 6 other federal agencies, including the U.S. Department of Agriculture, HUD, the Department of Interior, Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Department of the Interior, Bureau of Reclamation, the Department of Health and Human Services, Indian Health Service, and finally, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The Affordable Connectivity Program, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law included $65 billion to expand broadband in communities, which will help lower the cost of broadband for eligible households and expand access to reliable services for rural, urban, suburban, and tribal communities across the country. Households receiving HUD rental assistance qualify for Affordable Connectivity Program subsidies, including high-speed broadband prices at $30 a month or less, enabling tens of millions of low-income households eligible for the Affordable Connectivity Program to get high-speed internet access at no charge. For more information about this program, please visit the provided link. Our lead hazard mitigations. The Office of Lead Hazard Control and Healthy Homes provides funds to state and local governments to develop cost-effective ways to reduce lead-based paint hazards. In addition, the office enforces HUD lead-based paint regulations, provides public outreach and technical assistance, and conducts technical studies to help protect children and their families from the health and safety hazards in the home. Current funding opportunities include a lead hazard reductions grant with an estimated total program funding over $400 million. This funding opportunity can be found at the provided link. Our multi-family housing investment. The Inflation Reduction Act provided $1 billion in funding to HUD's Office of Multifamily Housing Programs to implement the Green and Resilient Retrofit Program, as well as to support benchmarking of water and energy use in multifamily assisted housing. The Green and Resilient Retrofit Program will provide grant and loan fundings to facilitate retrofitment of properties participating in its multifamily assisted housing programs to make them more energy efficient, healthier, and resilient in the face of natural disasters and climate change. Eligible properties will include those participating in the Section 8 project-based rental assistance, the Section 202 supportive housing for low-income elderly, and Section 811 supportive housing for low-income persons with disability. Our home investment. The home is the largest federal block grant to state and local governments designed exclusively to create affordable housing for low-income households. Home funds are awarded annually as formula grants to participating jurisdictions. The program's flexibility allows state and local governments to use home funds for grants, direct loans, loan guarantees, or other forms of credit enhancements, or rental assistance and security deposits. As you can see below, in fiscal year 2022, Missouri received over $13 million. This figure only includes funding for the state of Missouri. However, there are other entitlement communities within Missouri where funding is available for those who meet the population criterion. Although these funds aren't directly associated with the bill and the IRA funds, they can be leveraged to support various community needs to include improving energy efficiency and lowering utility costs for HUD-assisted properties. This concludes my presentation. Feel free to reach out anytime. Again, my slides will be posted in the chat along with a quick guide for HUD's programs. With that, I'll turn it back over to Candace.
All right, thank you so much, Fred. As you heard today, there are many opportunities for communities For the sake of time, we could not cover all of them today. However, we have worked with headquarters to develop a list of current and upcoming grant opportunities. This listing will be posted on our website in the coming days, and it includes points of contact for ease of use for the folks in our region. The list will be updated on a regular basis to keep you informed and help you prepare for these opportunities with as much advance notice as possible. I thank everyone for submitting questions today. Participants who did not have their questions addressed immediately will receive a phone call from our subject matter experts. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and we look forward to working with you throughout this process. Have a great afternoon.